aren't they? No? Don't suppose they are anymore. But at one time, motorways were a transport revolution. These days, they're more a cause of frustration than anything else. I'm sure every driver's been stuck on one at some time, and you know how annoying that can be. They're designed for ideal conditions. When the traffic's running freely, they get you from A to B very, very efficiently. But when there's any kind of problem, you might be stuck on one for a very long time. We're standing on a bridge near Junction 5, just outside Watford. This was the most southerly end of what was the first section of the M1. Most people think the M1 was the first motorway to be built. In fact, the numbering system comes from the zoning of roads in the UK. The M1 was the second motorway to be built. The first was the Preston bypass, which is now part of the M6. The other end of the initial stretch of the M1 is about 72 miles that way.
Now we're away from the noisy road, let me briefly explain the road numbering system. It was first introduced in the early 1900s and therefore predates the construction of any motorway. The UK is divided up into zones that radiate out from London for England and Wales and from Edinburgh for Scotland. There are 6 zones for England and Wales, running from 1 to 6, and 3 zones for Scotland, going from 7 to 9. Roads have the prefix of M for motorways, 8 for arterial roads, and B for secondary roads. There are also C, D and U prefixes for minor roads. The first digit of a road corresponds to the furthest anti-clockwise zone it enters. Single-digit road numbers are used for the most important routes, like the A1 connecting London and Edinburgh. The M1 therefore gets its name because of the M prefix for being a motorway, and that the furthest anti-clockwise zone it enters is 1. It's also a primary motorway and therefore only contains 1 digit. The M10 was also opened in 1959 and connected Junction 7 near St Albans of the M1 to the A414. It has since been downgraded to an A road, renumbered as part of the A414. There are plenty of exceptions to the road numbering, such as those passing over the Thames in London, as well as there being reserved blocks of numbers, but we won't go into that here.
I don't know if you can see the sign behind me, but we're standing at Junction 18, just outside Crick in Northamptonshire. This was the northern end of the initial stretch of the M1. I do find it a little bit of a shame that it wasn't a couple of miles shorter, because then it would have run from Watford in Hertfordshire to Watford in Northamptonshire. But maybe that would have caused confusion. So we have Junction 5 in the south, Junction 18 in the north. And I bet you're thinking, but what were those numbers back then when that was the only section of the M1? In fact, those numbers were the same back then. The extension from Junction 5 to Junction 1, further into London, was on the original plan. The actual numbering wasn't really used by members of the public. The southern part would have been commonly known as Watford Junction, not to be confused with Watford Junction, the train station, and up here in the north, Rugby Junction, or sometimes the southern terminus or the northern terminus.
Designed by Sir Owen Williams, the M1 used modular design techniques and new materials such as reinforced concrete to control costs and to speed construction. A 1964 study by the Road Research Laboratory and the University of Birmingham estimated the M1's economic benefit would repay its capital cost in 6 to 8 years, a rare achievement for major infrastructure projects. Work commenced in constructing the 73-mile stretch of the M1 in March of 1958. The project was split between two contractors. John Lang & Sons built the northern section, while Tarmac Construction handled the southern St Albans bypass, which was junctions 5 to 10. This division allowed parallel work, speeding up delivery. The M1 was the UK's first motorway with a dual 3-lane carriageway, a significant upgrade from the dual 2-lane Preston bypass. 5,000 men were brought in to work on the project. Lots of them were Irish, but workers from all over the Commonwealth were employed to construct the road. The workers were called navvies, the term derived from inland navigators who built the canal system in the 18th and 19th century. They were tough men who were used to working outdoors and in harsh conditions. There was basic machinery like diggers and bulldozers, but lots of the work was done with pure manual labour with picks and shovels. In all, 183 bridges were constructed, which is an average of one every 3 days. Only 5 houses and 3 bungalows were demolished to make way for the entire M1. The M1's opening by Transport Minister Ernest Marples on the 2nd of November 1959 was met with public jubilation. One of the most impressive aspects of the construction of the M1 was the speed at which it was built, taking just 19 months to lay the entire 73-mile stretch. That's a rate of 1 mile of fully completed road every 8 days. The project was completed on time and on budget at a cost of 21 million, which is 550 million at 2025 prices. That works out at 7.5 million per mile in 2025. Now compare that with the 900 million it cost to build the M6 toll road, which is 1.6 billion at 2025 prices, which is 59 million per mile. That's about 8 times the cost per mile of the M1. There were no crash barriers when the road was first constructed, and all there was between the two carriageways was a grass verge. There were also no speed limits and no laws compelling drivers or passengers to wear seatbelts. This, combined with the relatively basic car design, led to some pretty awful accidents. It wasn't until 1966 that the 70 mph speed limit was introduced by Barbara Castle. In 1967 it became law to wear seatbelts in the front seats if they were fitted and the car was first used on or after the 1st of April 1967. When the road was first opened, public information films were made explaining how to use motorways. A booklet was also produced called the Motorway Code, which was later incorporated into the Highway Code. This is Watford Gap Services. It lies between Daventry and Rugby at the northern end of the M1. It wasn't fully functional when the M1 opened in November 1959. It did have basic facilities that were running, like toilets, and there was a petrol station, but it wasn't until later in 1960 that it opened completely. Back then it was run by Blue Boar, but in 1995 it became under the management of Roadchef. The second motorway service stop to be built was Newport Pagnell, a little bit south of here, that also opened in 1960. Before motorways came along, road signs in the UK were chaotic, with no consistency with shape or colour. The M1's original signs were designed based upon recommendations from the Anderson Committee, which established the UK's first standardised motorway signage system. The system was designed by Jock Kinnear and Margaret Calvert, who revolutionised British road signs. The key to the design was clarity and consistency with a minimalistic look. All signs used the same typeface. They were also very large by standards of the road signs of the day, with each letter measuring 300mm or 12 inches in height. The size was needed so they could be seen clearly from a distance and considering the speed of the traffic. The signs were a crisp zinc white on an ultramarine Plasazure blue background. The design was so good that it remains exactly the same to this day. After designing the motorway signs, the duo went on to redesign all of the UK's road signs with the same emphasis on consistency and clarity. The M1 was designed for 13,000 to 14,000 vehicles per day, but it now handles 130,000 to 140,000 vehicles per day, which showcases its enduring importance. With its iconic blue signs and enduring design, it remains a vital lifeline for drivers today. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Until next time, keep cruising.